The story you're about to hear, it sounds like fiction, I know, but every single word is the truth. This is how I went from being the waitress they laughed at for having holes in her shoes to the woman who signed the biggest check in their father's life. They mocked me for being poor. I married their father and took the family name. And trust me, the name change was the least of their problems. You know that feeling when the air just freezes, like someone's turned the world into a snow globe and you're trapped, waiting for the shake? That was me. 2 years ago, right in the middle of a private party at the most ridiculous, over-the-top mansion I'd ever stepped foot in. My life was defined by my hourly wage and the fact that I had to walk an extra 2 blocks home because the bus fare was going up again. Their lives defined by which color yacht to take out on a Tuesday. I was serving champagne, trying to look invisible, which, by the way, is impossible when you're wearing a uniform 3 sizes too big. That's when the 2 sisters, the heiresses, decided I was their entertainment for the night. One of them, all sleek blonde hair and designer dress, snapped her fingers at me. Snap, right in my face, like I was a dog. "Hey, you," she drawled, her voice hitting that perfect pitch of bored cruelty. "Get me a sparkling water, and wipe that pathetic look off your face. It's ruining the ambiance." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat that tasted like pure humiliation. I turned to walk away, but then the quieter one, but somehow meaner, she spoke up. "Wait, look at her shoes," she said. Everything stopped. The background chatter, the fancy jazz music, it all just faded. I could feel the heat rising up my neck. Those shoes, they were my shame. They were the reminder that every dollar I earned went to my brother's college fund, not to anything as frivolous as basic comfort for myself. The first one giggled. "Oh my God, are those duct tape? Is that actually duct tape holding the sole on? That's not a shoe, that's a tragedy." The second one spoke, quieter but more piercing. "She must be so poor she can't afford $20 shoes. Imagine serving us in those. It's disgusting. Give her a 20. She can buy a pack of gum to fix the other one." The laughter. It wasn't a gentle chuckle. It was a full-blown, throw your head back, gasping for air roar of rich girl superiority. They stood there, bathed in the glow of a chandelier that cost more than my entire life savings, just obliterating me. And the worst part? Their father, the patriarch, the man who owned half the city's real estate, the man whose name was on the invitation. He was standing right there. He was late 60s, silver hair, sharp suit, eyes that seemed to take in everything and give nothing back. A stone-cold, old money guy. I braced myself. I expected him to join in, or maybe to fire me on the spot for being disgusting, as his daughter put it. But he didn't. He just looked at me. Not with pity, not with contempt, just observation. And then he did the weirdest thing. He cut the laughter short. "That's enough. Go greet the Beaumonts immediately." They bristled, but they obeyed, because when the father spoke, even his spoiled daughters jumped. As they walked away, he looked at me again. He didn't apologize for them. He didn't offer me money. He just looked at my name tag, and then he walked away. No word, no acknowledgement, just a silence that felt heavier than the sisters' laughter. But in that silence, a seed was planted, a quiet, burning vow. You will regret this. The incident with the shoes didn't just make me angry. It made me focus. I started noticing things about the household. Their world was spotless and perfect on the outside, but underneath the marble floors and silk curtains, it was a mess. especially the father. He was lonely. He had the world, but he had no one. My work shifts started bringing me into contact with him more often, not because I was stalking him, but because he worked from home a lot, in a massive mahogany-paneled library that smelled like old paper and single malt scotch. He drank coffee, black, no sugar, and he was meticulous about the temperature. The house staff, they hated making his coffee. It was too much trouble, but I didn't hate it. I saw it as a task, a challenge. I stopped just pouring the coffee. I started listening. Week 1, I noticed he always paused his work at 10:17 a.m. Not 10:15, 10:17. I brought the coffee at 10:16. Week 2, I noticed he switched from reading financial reports to reading classic literature every Thursday morning. I started leaving a small, perfectly pressed linen napkin instead of a paper one on Thursdays. A silent nod to the literature. Week 3, his favorite cup. It had a tiny chip on the rim near the handle. Everyone ignored it. I cleaned that cup myself every day, polishing it until it shone, and always placed the handle facing him, the chip side turned away. After about a month of this silent, meticulous routine, he finally spoke. I put the coffee down at 10:17:01, exactly as his thumb lifted from the screen of his tablet. You are the only person who brings it hot enough. I didn't stumble. I didn't blush. I looked him right in his intense gray eyes. You like your coffee exactly 185 degrees, sir. Any higher, it scorches the bean. Any lower, it's tepid. I also note you prefer the cup with the chipped rim. It has a better feel in your hand. He leaned back in his leather chair. The silence this time wasn't humiliation. It was respect. He didn't say anything about the temperature. He went straight for the psychology. You've been studying me. I am paid to observe, sir, not just serve. Observing prevents mistakes, and mistakes cost time. Your time is worth more than mine. He laughed, a small, dry, unexpected sound. That was the first time I felt like a person to him, not just a service unit. And that tiny crack of genuine amusement was the first brick laid in the foundation of my revenge. Of course, the sisters noticed. They saw me talking to their father, not just serving, but talking, and their radar for perceived threats went off. To them, anyone who wasn't their mother's ghost or their own reflection was a threat to their inheritance. It was in the kitchen one afternoon. I was on my break, eating a sad little tuna sandwich I'd made at home. One of the sisters walked in holding a designer handbag like it was a shield. Still eating that peasant food, Ava? You know, talking to father doesn't magically turn you into one of us. You're still just the help, a very talkative piece of help. The other one appeared, offering mock sympathy. She's just trying to crawl her way up. You can't fault the ambition of the lower class. But honestly, you're getting desperate. He talks to the gardener more than you. This time, I didn't look at my shoes. I looked at the sister's face. She had a small, almost invisible stain on the collar of her silk blouse. I kept my voice soft. I hear the man is meeting with his lawyers tomorrow about the restructuring of holdings. It's a closed-door meeting. It's interesting how closely that follows your latest credit card statement, the one I saw the accountant looking over yesterday afternoon. Her eyes went wide. She hadn't even realized I was in the room when the accountant was there. You stay out of my business, you little spy. But I'm not a spy. I'm just paid to observe, remember? The next day, the father called me into his library. My heart was pounding like a drum solo. I thought, this is it. I'm fired. But he didn't fire me. He looked at me, a genuine flicker of something I couldn't place in his eyes. Tell me about the company's internal reporting system, the one for catering and facility management.
He asked me specific, complex questions about his massive household logistics, not as a boss to a maid, but as a CEO to a manager, because he realized I wasn't just mopping the floor, I was learning the layout of the castle. Over the next few months, our connection grew from coffee to conversations. He saw a mind he could test. I saw a man whose world was built on sand. He saw my drive. I saw his quiet desperation. He started asking me for my thoughts on small business acquisitions. He'd test my logic on market trends. One day, I remember so clearly, he threw a stack of papers across his desk. They were architectural plans for a new wing of the mansion the girls insisted on building. Frustrated, he said, "Another vanity project, another multi-million-dollar waste. It's nothing but ego."
I told them no, but they keep pushing. What would you do, Ava? I wouldn't build a new wing, sir. I'd renovate the old one. The structure is sound. The plumbing is the problem. You spend $20 million on a new wing or $5 million on a total overhaul of the infrastructure. One is showing off. The other is building lasting wealth. He stared at me, and he smiled. That was the moment I realized my revenge was no longer about proving them wrong. It was about proving me right. It was about earning a seat at the table, not crawling for crumbs underneath it. The sisters were completely unhinged now. My relationship with the father was purely professional, a mentorship, a strange friendship. But to them, it was a threat wrapped in a scandal. They started leaving trash in the halls for me to clean up right after I'd cleaned them. They accidentally spilled red wine on my jacket. One even replaced my dish soap with motor oil. I never reacted. I just cleaned it up, noted it, and kept my eyes on the prize. Then came the meeting that sealed my fate. It was a formal dinner. I was serving the main course, a ridiculously fancy duck dish that smelled amazing. One of the sisters, mid-sentence, suddenly pointed her fork at me. Loud and dramatic, she said, "Father, don't you think it's inappropriate how attached our maid has become? She acts like she's part of the family. You really need to set boundaries. Or maybe she thinks you're going to give her a massive bonus. Maybe she thinks she's going to marry you." The whole table went silent. That word, marry. The other sister snickered. "Oh, that's rich. Look at her. Her entire wardrobe is probably cheaper than that napkin. She wants to marry daddy for his money? She should aim higher than an old man in his debt-ridden empire." Debt-ridden empire. That phrase caught my attention. I had seen enough paperwork by now to know the empire was vast, but fragile. The father was rich, yes, but he was overextended. The girls had no idea. They only saw the surface. 2 days later, he called me into his library again. He pushed a file across the desk. It wasn't a contract. It was a portfolio, a financial breakdown of his company. It showed a crippling level of liquidity problems. He looked me right in my soul. He think I'm invincible. They think my money will last forever. They're wrong. The truth is, Ava, that I need a partner, not a daughter. My daughters are parasites. They will destroy this company when I'm gone. They have no business sense, no restraint. Then came the question, the one that changed everything. "I want you to marry me." I didn't laugh. I didn't cry. I didn't even gasp. I just stared at the debt ratio on the portfolio and mentally calculated the tax benefits. "Why me, sir?" "Because I trust you to keep the company from going under. I trust you to protect my legacy from them. And you will be CEO when I step down. A 1-year post-nuptial agreement. You manage the company, you save the core assets, and in return, you get the title, the family name, and a significant amount of shares that can't be challenged by my children because you're my wife. It's a transaction, Ava, a business deal. Do we have a deal?"
that wasn't enough. I wasn't doing this for a salary or a title I'd lose in a year. I was doing it for that moment in the kitchen, for the duct tape on my shoes, for the shame they had poured over me. I have a counteroffer. The 1-year term. I need 5 years of undisputed full authority as CEO, not after you step down, but starting on the day of the wedding. You retain the chairman title, but all executive decisions are mine. I want the power to restructure the entire company, including the sale of any subsidiary that is hemorrhaging cash. And finally, I want the two of them, the sisters, removed from the company board, effective immediately. They get their trust funds, but they get zero say in the company's future. He paused. He thought. He looked at the pictures of his daughters, smiling on a ski trip. The look on his face wasn't love. It was deep disappointment. You drive a hard bargain, Ava, but it's a necessary one. Done. Get my lawyers. Draw up the papers. And that was it. The revenge plot wasn't some dramatic movie fantasy. It was a merger and acquisition. It was pure business. I signed the paperwork, and suddenly, the duct tape shoe girl was about to become the new Mrs. Sterling. The wedding was exactly 1 month later. It was small, quiet, just the lawyers, a judge, and of course, the sisters. They showed up in identical, offensively expensive black dresses. They looked like they were attending a funeral, which in a way they were. The funeral of their easy access to their father's wallet. One of the sisters pulled me aside right before the ceremony. Her eyes were spitting fire. You gold-digging peasant, you are a joke. Do you honestly think anyone buys this? You think wearing the name will make you one of us? You're trash, and you always will be. We will find a way to break this prenup. You won't last 6 months. I looked at her. I smiled. It wasn't a sweet smile. It was the smile of someone who just checked the closing stock price and realized they won the market. Dear, it's not a prenup. It's a postnuptial agreement, and it was drawn up by your father's lawyers, not mine. It's airtight. And yes, I am taking the name because you called me poor, and now I'm poor with your last name. And guess what? The family name now answers to the former maid. How does that taste? The day after the wedding, I walked into the corporate office. I wasn't the maid. I was the new CEO. I wore a suit that was perfectly tailored, but I didn't care about the designer. I cared about the pockets. They had to be deep enough for a pen and a notebook. The first staff meeting was brutal. The old guard, all men in their 50s, looked at me like I was misplaced intern. They gave me the patronizing smiles, the let's see what the trophy wife can do looks. The first hour, I let them talk. They droned on about tradition, market sentiment, and why they couldn't possibly cut their departmental budgets. Then I opened the financial reports I'd been studying for months. I didn't use jargon or fancy PowerPoints. I just used simple, brutal facts. The Southeast Plastics Division has lost $80 million in the last 2 quarters. You call it market sentiment. I call it incompetence. The private jet hangar expenses alone could fund a mid-sized startup for a year. That's not tradition. That's arrogance. Effective immediately, the plastics division is being sold. Hangar expenses are tapped at $5,000 per month. If you need to fly further than 500 miles, you book commercial. The era of playing around is over. The company is bleeding. My job is to staunch the flow. Any questions? Address them to my secretary. Your job is to make money, not spend it. Meeting adjourned. They were stunned. This wasn't the trophy wife. This was the accountant who knew where they hid the bodies. Within a week, the stock market, which had been stagnant for years, saw an uptick. Why? Because the market likes one thing above all else, certainty, and I was certain. The sisters, completely blindsided by the CEO appointment and their sudden removal from the board, launched an all-out war. They hired their own lawyers. They tried to get the post-nuptial overturned. They screamed at their father, calling him a traitor. The father, my new husband, was distant, but calm. He knew what he was doing. He watched the stock go up, and he watched his company breathe a sigh of relief. One night, the sisters cornered me in the hallway right by the grand staircase. They were hysterical. "You ruined us. We were supposed to inherit this. This was ours. You a thief. You will be exposed. Everyone will know you were just a waitress. They'll laugh you out of the city. You're a fake," the other cried. I just looked at them standing there, dressed like queens, acting like toddlers who had their toys taken away. I remembered the duct tape on my shoes. I remembered the roar of their laughter. "You were a waitress, you're right, but as a waitress, I learned the most valuable lesson you two never did: how to serve a customer. You treat your customers, your employees, your suppliers, your father, your life like garbage, and they will betray you. I treated your father with respect. I gave him a solution to a problem you were actively making worse. I was not here for his money. I was here for the power to fix the mess you were waiting to create. You called me a gold digger? Fine, but gold diggers don't turn a company around. CEOs do. And the one thing you can never steal from me, no matter how much you try, is this: I am a sterling now, and you have to answer to me."
5 years passed. 5 years of restructuring, selling off dead weight, making cuts, and making a fortune. Holdings didn't just survive, it thrived. I became known in the financial world as the Ice Queen, the one who took a crumbling empire and turned it into a powerhouse. I saved thousands of jobs. I created new divisions. I delivered on my promise. The father, now frail but happy, watched it all unfold from his library. He was proud. On the 5th anniversary of our wedding, I sat with him. The postnup was complete. It was time for the final transaction. "You did it, Ava. You saved it. I've signed over the final shares to you. You are now the majority stakeholder. My daughters, they are comfortable, but they have no control. That's what I wanted. Now you are free. You can divorce me. You can walk away. You have your fortune." I looked at him. I had done my job. I had gotten my revenge. I had the fortune. I could have it all. But then I looked at the name on my business card. I had earned that name. I had made it mean something honorable. I'm not going anywhere. I earned this name. I earned this company, and I'm not done running it. The agreement was a business transaction, yes. But somewhere along the line, I realized you weren't just a client. You were a partner, a mentor, and maybe even a friend. The irony, the full circle moment. I married him for revenge, for a seat at the table, for a name. I stayed because I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with the act of building, not spending. I took the name, and then I gave the name new meaning. The daughters who mocked me, they now had to watch their stepmother become a legend. Where are they now? They still live off their trust funds. They still travel. They still shop. They're still just as spoiled and empty as the day I met them. The only difference is, now when they introduce themselves, the person they're talking to usually asks, "Oh, any relation to Ava Sterling?" The last time I saw one of them was outside a high-end restaurant trying to hail a cab. I pulled up in my black sedan, rolled down the window, and looked her in the eye. "Need a ride? I'm going downtown to sign the papers for the new acquisition. It's a big one. It's called The Future." She just stared, her face a perfect mixture of hatred and recognition. I didn't wait for an answer. I rolled up the window and drove away. Never let someone else define your value.
If they mock your shoes, buy the company that makes theirs. Let's get real for a minute. The whole coffee ritual, that was my market research. Every trip to that library wasn't about serving a drink. It was about data gathering. When he handed me that financial portfolio, I didn't just see numbers. I saw the architecture of his failure, and more importantly, the blueprint from my success. The debt he had wasn't standard. It was personal debt tied up in corporate assets, yacht maintenance, private island property taxes, and worst of all, a series of failed movie production companies the girls had talked him into funding. They were pouring money into vanity projects, like a sink with the stopper pulled in. He was borrowing against the core real estate holdings, which were the foundation of the whole empire. It was a time bomb. I spent the night before the final signing, not celebrating, but dissecting the documents. I even found a clause where one sister had an option to purchase a major commercial property at a ridiculously low pre-boom price, provided her father signed off before the end of the fiscal quarter. That property was the key to their entire liquidity problem. If she got it, the company was finished, and she was counting on the chaos of his impending illness, which she knew about, to slip the papers through. The truth about their daughter's debt was more than just their credit card bills. It was their entitlement. They saw the company as a vending machine that constantly dispensed cash. They didn't see the risk. They didn't see the structure. They saw the sparkle. I saw the rot. And the father knew I saw the rot. That's why he picked me. Not because he loved me, but because I was the only person with the guts to use a chainsaw on the family tree to save the roots. My first 2 months as CEO was a baptism by fire. The old board, the old executives, they were waiting for me to trip up. They were whispering in the hallways, placing bets on my failure. They thought, she's a woman. She's young. She was a maid. She's got no business acumen. My biggest test came with the proposal for the new London skyscraper, a project the father had stalled for 2 years because the cost was too high and the projected return was too long-term. The executive in charge, a guy named Thorne, presented the plans to me with a condescending smile. He made sure to use words like synergy and macroeconomic forecasting, like I wouldn't know what they meant. Now, Mrs. Sterling, I know this is a large number, but the potential capital appreciation is enormous. We just need to greenlight the initial $150 million immediately. I didn't look at the building design. I looked at the contractor list. Thorne, this contractor, they were 3 months late and $20 million over budget on the Miami project, correct? Well, yes, but that was an anomaly. They have a new management team now, he stammered. And who is the chief financial officer of this new management team? He paused. He didn't know. He looked at his notes. I didn't let him. It's one of the sister's ex-boyfriends, the one she's trying to punish for breaking up with her by sending him every piece of bad business the company has. They will bleed us dry out of spite. I don't care about your synergy, Thorne. I care about who you're sleeping with and who my stepdaughter is fighting with. Find a new contractor, one with a zero-tolerance policy for drama. You have 48 hours, or you'll be the anomaly. That was the moment the board realized I wasn't playing the game their way. I was playing my game, and in my game, emotional intelligence and ruthless observation beat decades of outdated business strategy every time. The London skyscraper was shelved until I found a contractor who wasn't involved in a family feud. I saved $150 million in one conversation. The final, most explosive confrontation wasn't in the corporate office. It was back at the mansion. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The father was resting. The sisters burst into the library where I was, of course, working. They had finally managed to piece together the entire post-nuptial structure and realized they were locked out. For 5 full years. One was screaming, "You planned this. You were nice to him. You manipulated an old sick man. You should be in prison." The other's voice was tight with hate. "Give us the shares, Ava, or we'll sue for alienation of affection." We'll expose the whole sham marriage. You think your reputation can handle the truth? I didn't even stand up. Reputation is built on results. My results are a 300% stock appreciation in 3 years. What are your results? 3 bankrupt businesses and a pile of invoices from private jets? They are his flesh and blood. What are you? A glorified servant. You were literally scrubbing our toilets. One cried, spitting mad. Slowly, every word measured, I replied. I was. And I did it well. I was on time. I was thorough. I paid attention to detail. I showed up. I worked hard. Those are the qualities that run a billion-dollar company. You two are born with the name, but you never earned it. You treated it like a credit card with no limit. I took the name, and I'm treating it like a sacred responsibility. I leaned forward, dropping the final bomb. And let's talk about alienation of affection. He didn't sign the papers because I was nice. He signed them because I was honest. I showed him the proof that you were planning to cash out and sell the most valuable core assets to fund your lavish lifestyle, even if it meant destroying his legacy. You alienated his affection long before I made him the best cup of coffee of his life. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a board meeting to prepare for, and you two are not on the guest list. People ask me if the revenge was sweet, and I always tell them this: no. Sweet is a temporary flavor. What I felt was satisfaction. Deep, complicated, lasting satisfaction. Sweet revenge is spilling soup on someone's lap. Lasting satisfaction is changing the entire power structure of their lives, so they have to live under your rules. The thing about their mockery wasn't the duct tape itself. It was the absolute certainty in their voices that I was less than them, that my poverty was a moral failing, a permanent stain, that the difference between us was unbridgeable. My revenge was proving that the bridge isn't money. The bridge is competence. It's drive. It's the willingness to work the hardest, to pay the closest attention, and to stop taking insults personally and start taking them analytically. When they called me a pathetic gold digger, they showed me exactly where their biggest fear was: losing their financial comfort. I simply targeted that fear with precision. Over the next 2 years, the final 2 years of my contract,
I systematically got rid of every vanity project the girls had encouraged. The failed movie studios? Gone. The private island? Sold. The funds from those sales didn't go to me. They went straight back into the company's capital reserves. I even sold the wing of the mansion the girls had fought so hard to build, the one that was nothing but show. I turned it into a high-end short-term rental property, generating a massive new revenue stream. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. They built monuments to their ego. I built a machine that printed money. I even changed the company motto. The old motto was something flowery about legacy and tradition. I replaced it with 3 words: precision, value, future. And I applied that motto to everything, from the CEO down to the new janitorial contract. I made sure every single worker in that building was paid fairly, treated with respect, and given a chance to move up. Why? Because I was one of them. Because I knew that the person mopping the floor is the one who notices the crack in the foundation. That's where the real power is. It's in the observation, not the title. One night, a few months after the 5-year agreement was up, the father and I was sitting in the library. Not in a business meeting, just sitting. He was weaker now. He looked at me, and his eyes, which had always been so cold, had a little warmth. Your loyalty was always to the company, Ava, not to me, and certainly not to my children. That's what I admire most. That's why I was right. My loyalty was to my ambition, sir. You just happened to be the way to achieve it. He chuckled weakly. Honest to the last, my girls,
They hated you because you were poor. They hated you because you were competent, because you worked harder than they ever would. You were the physical proof that their comfortable existence was a delusion. He paused, and then he said something that stopped my heart. I was embarrassed by them, Ava. The way they treated you. It reminded me of how I treated people when I started out. The mockery, the arrogance. I saw my younger, colder self in their eyes. And by marrying you, by giving you the reins, I was doing penance. I was fixing my own past by securing the company's future. Thank you, Ava, for giving my name meaning again. He died 6 months later, peacefully, in his sleep. I was the one who managed the funeral. I was the one who stood by the casket. The sisters were there, of course, but they stood on the sidelines, looking like guests, not family. They had the blood, but I had the legacy. His will was clean, simple, and totally bulletproof. The girls got their trust funds, secured and significant. But the controlling shares, the power, the name itself, it all passed to me. Ava Sterling. The funny thing, I could have changed my name back after the 5 years. I could have gone back to my maiden name, taken my money, and lived a quiet, anonymous life. But I didn't. I kept it. Because every time I sign a document, every time I'm introduced in a boardroom, I hear that name, Sterling, and it's a reminder. It's a reminder that money doesn't buy class, and privilege doesn't buy competency. It's a reminder that you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for, and you get what you observe. And those shoes, the duct-taped ones, I had them framed. They sit on my office shelf, right next to the stock ticker. They are the most expensive piece of art I own, a physical representation of a 0 point, a starting line. So the next time someone tries to put you down, to mock you, to make you feel small, don't get mad, get observant. Find the biggest hole in their life, and quietly, meticulously, without an ounce of drama, start building your future right there. They mocked my poverty. I took their name. And now my name is the only one anyone remembers. That's the real story. That's the mic drop. You can try to fight fire with fire, but sometimes the best strategy is to become the air that puts the fire out. Look, I know this sounds like a fairy tale, but it's the anti-fairy tale. There was no prince, only a shrewd businessman. There was no glass slipper, only a duct-taped boot. The only magic involved was the kind that comes from 18-hour days and a brain that refuses to quit. If you're watching this and you're feeling judged, dismissed, or mocked, remember this. They are giving you free data about their weaknesses. They are showing you exactly what they value and what they fear. Write it down. Use it. Take that negative energy, that humiliation, and turn it into the most focused, burning ambition you have. Because their biggest mistake wasn't mocking the waitress. It was giving the waitress a clear view of the whole operation. And once a detail-oriented person gets a clear view, it's already over. Seriously, it's over. Now go out there and get what you want.